We'll get the sign-in sheet here.
Oh, one more high? Oh, I'll do it again anyway. I get 2 checks this way.
Yeah, right.
Really? Give me that. My name is Barbara Glesner-Fines. I've been here at UMKC for 20-some plus years at the law school. And I have been playing with computer technology since I hooked up a Commodore computer to my television set and wrote a maze game that foiled my brother, and that was my greatest victory. It's all gone downhill since then as computer technology has way surpassed me. But I do love to use computer technology in my teaching. I don't teach online to law students. I do teach online to my law students. I teach online to law students around the world, however, and to lawyers around the world through CLE programs and through the computer-assisted instruction programs that I write. And it's that aspect of my use of technology that I'd like to share with you today and talk about how learning to write computer-assisted instruction for me has made me a much better classroom teacher, as well as learning something about creating computer-assisted instruction. So we'll start with a pop quiz. Yes. Did you hear that? Isn't it powerful? Consider the power of the pop quiz. We know that in order for people to learn, they have to attend. They have to be attentive. A pop quiz just has a way of kind of perking you up in your seat and causing you to come to attention. I think that the pop quiz, or the variation on that, is one of the most powerful tools that we can use in the classroom and online, and it's the one that I make the use of the most. Not necessarily the pop part, but the quiz part. And I hope that at the end of this session, you too will be motivated to make greater use of the electronic pop quiz or computer-assisted instruction in the form of quizzes and tests and lessons that require interaction with your student, challenge them, give them feedback, and enhance their learning. In order to do that, I hope to give you some of the key questions that you want to ask yourself when you're creating these kinds of tools. Talk about some of the different forms of question types. Now, for some of you, you may have been writing multiple choice exams, paper exams, for as long as I've been teaching as well, and this might not seem like anything new, but I think that as our presenters yesterday morning mentioned, there are some things. Good teaching is good teaching. You take bad teaching and you put it online, you've got bad teaching. But if you take good teaching and put it online, you don't necessarily have good teaching. There are some adjustments that you have to make in an online environment, and that goes with quizzes and question types and the like as well. And so I'd like to discuss that just a little bit with you, and then discuss with you some tools, some easy tools for creating these kinds of learning objects. Okay, first the motivational part. Why computer-assisted instruction? How can writing computer-assisted instruction lessons or tests or quizzes and assessments improve your overall teaching? Well, let's start with what good teaching requires. We know that the standards of good practice in undergraduate education developed way back when, in 1987, and accepted widely as pretty sound statements of good educational practice say that good educational practice requires that we have high expectations for our students, that our students have a lot of opportunity for faculty-student contact, getting to know our students, them getting to know us, and having an opportunity for exchange, that it have a lot of time on task, that they're not going to learn if they don't engage the materials, engage the work. Again, the interactive aspect with the faculty, that their learning be active, that simply being, we being the fonts of wisdom and pouring out into their empty vessels is not a model of education that really works. That good education requires regular opportunities for the students to test themselves and to be given prompt feedback, formative feedback, so that they can improve their learning. Good education is cooperative. It gives students an opportunity to work together, and it respects diverse ways of learning and knowing. So, how does computer-assisted instruction meet these standards of good practice? High expectations. If you create a good computer-assisted instruction lesson for your students to do online, it's going to communicate to them very clearly what your core competencies are. If it's in the lesson, they know it's important, much in the way that the old technology of the chalkboard told them. If it goes on the chalkboard, it's important. If it goes in your online lesson, they tend to view it as important. So you'd better make sure it is. And choose that the things that you put into your computer-assisted instruction lessons, make it very clear what are the expectations that you have for the students in using that. Time on task, you know, they love to play. And so the play aspect of computer-assisted instruction, the idea that they're online, that they're clicking buttons, that things are happening, causes them to spend a little bit more time learning. And so it does increase time on task with these additional and different learning materials. Good computer-assisted instruction is always interactive. To the extent that you can personalize your voice in computer-assisted instruction, you make it even more so. If the students know this is a lesson you wrote, this isn't something canned that you're giving to them, but this is something you've designed for their learning, they'll forgive a lot of the glitches. It doesn't have to be particularly pretty. It doesn't have to have particularly fancy bells and whistles. If it has your voice, then it provides one of those factors that we know good education provides, and that is faculty-student contact. They are virtually interacting with you. Obviously, good computer-assisted instruction is active. It requires the students to engage the materials, and not just by clicking, but engaging their brains as well as their mouse. Good computer-assisted instruction provides prompt feedback, immediate, granular feedback with a reward for mastery. There is nothing like getting that green screen comes up that says correct. How much better when it comes up and says correct. Here's what you've demonstrated that you understand. Or incorrect. Were you thinking this? Perhaps this is a common misconception. So I think a lot of times you'll see computer-assisted instruction that I believe is poorly done, where all the time and attention has been put into the questions and very little has been put into the feedback. But the feedback is where the learning is going to take place, not merely in the questions themselves. A lot of times we think of computer-assisted instruction as being a lone activity, the student with their computer clicking through the lesson, but you can certainly design very, very good computer-assisted instruction lessons that are cooperative. I'm very excited by the new opportunities of virtual worlds, the use of Second Life or virtual worlds that are being created in the law. I know in Scotland there's a university that has developed an entire city online, and the attorneys go and they open up their offices there, and people come to them with problems, and they go out into the city and they invest. This is all virtual, you understand. But there are real people behind the avatars that they're talking to, and it's a fabulous opportunity for students to learn to cooperate, to try out a different persona, and see, oh, let me see if what my teacher says is true, that if you are a cooperative and collaborative lawyer, you're not going to get steamrolled. You really can make a difference and solve problems. Let me try that out here where it's safe in this virtual environment. Or vice versa. Let me try seeing if being hard-nosed and aggressive, it really does hurt me. and diversity. Computer-assisted instruction provides students with another route into the material and respects diverse ways of knowing. And because it's accessible at varied times and in varied places, respects the diversity of needs of our students in terms of time and place of learning. Okay, so in particular today, what I want to talk about is the value of an online quiz. It increases the students' mastery of fundamental concepts. It improves their motivation. It is amazing. We do have a lot of Gold Star kids coming through educational systems, and it still works. It does for me. I'm sure it does for most folks. It builds their confidence. A lot of times I have students who use my computer-assisted instruction lessons not because they really need to learn anymore. They need to know that they have learned it. And it gives them that confidence so that they can say, okay, I got that. I'm ready to go on to the next piece of learning. It provides a tool for the students to assess their own learning and puts the onus on them a little bit. Instead of coming to me and, do I have this? Do I have this? I don't know. Figure out. Do you have this? Test yourself. Check to see. And it kind of shifts that balance of responsibility a little bit so that they, yet again, get the message that they're responsible for their learning. And equally important, computer-assisted instruction, these online quizzes can give you a very powerful tool for improving your own teaching because you'll know whether they're getting it or not. Now, when we talk about computer-assisted instruction, early on, computer-assisted instruction in terms of these lesson modules came out of the programmed learning. Did any of you ever do programmed learning in a book where you'd have the little piece of paper and you fill in and then you go down, and then that went online? Granular learning, break concepts down to their teeny tiniest piece, and you don't get to go on until you've mastered that. And for quick learners, it was terribly tedious because it was like, oh, just let me read this. I can learn this all, in 10 minutes, and you're making me go through this little game for an hour. But very, very effective, marching people through rote learning. Not very effective at engaging critical skills or more sophisticated, higher order learning objectives. Today, you can achieve those higher order learning objectives with computer-assisted instruction. It isn't just about drill and response, although it is fabulous for drill and response, and we all have elements of rote learning that our students have to learn. And there is nothing like just a good old-fashioned online flashcard drill for them to learn that. I know someone yesterday was asking, perhaps they're in the room, about medical technology, learning a medical language. Why spend time in class learning that? Why have them come from all over the city to come sit in a classroom to learn that technology? Isn't the classroom much better used for interactive, engaging, critical thinking, problem solving, cooperative kinds of learning? Let them go home and work on some flashcards. That's how they learn terminology, and then let them come in with that really sound base so they can use the technology and see what it means to actually say that to a patient. I believe yesterday you were talking about we need to get that the social skills. And I think we always have, but now we have an opportunity to shift some of that learning out of the classroom so that we can make more room for those skills that really can't be taught easily online. All right, so what kinds of choices do you have to make when you're going to use computer-assisted instruction in connection with your classes? Well, first, as with any good learning, you have to decide why. What are the learning objectives you have for your students? Some of those, as the example of learning rote vocabulary, it makes good sense to use computer-assisted instruction to engage the students in that learning. So think about what your purpose is in giving a try for computer-assisted instruction. Then choosing the content, obviously. And finally, deciding on an architecture for the delivery of this computer-assisted instruction. So, purpose. You decide what the learning objectives are for the students, and you communicate them clearly to the students. Is this something that some students are coming into the class, they need some background knowledge that others already have? Great use of computer-assisted instruction. Let them know. This is for you to check. Do you have the background knowledge necessary for this course? I know all the time I'm asking students, now, in your first year you learned this, right? And they all kind of, you know. And I know that this is in the syllabus and in the coverage of their first year course. Well, now, how silly of me to ask that. Of course they're not going to admit to that. So how much better for me to present a little quiz at the beginning of the semester to see, did you learn this? And then they, again, see the responsibility for having not just, engaged in a mind dump at the end of each semester and cleared the memory files, but actually have some responsibility for retaining their learning. Remediation. You'll have in a class of, and this is so important in the very large classes that we're teaching, there are going to be some students who just aren't catching it. They're just not getting it. Well, you can spend time in your office. You can hire graduate assistants. You can work on remediation for those students who need more and more and more, but that's an extraordinary investment of time. If you can put some of yourself into an online tool and capture that and then send them there, then you have found an efficiency in your own teaching that can be very powerful and very effective, and it carries less stigma. Students are far more likely to go in the privacy of their own home to access a lesson, to learn something that they didn't get, than to come to your office and, I know you explained it to me before, but can we go over this one more time? Foundational mastery. You got students coming to a class. You're going to be teaching them how to deliver bad news. Okay? The computer system just failed. Your patient is dying. You lost your case. The request for benefits that you've asked for isn't going to come through. Whatever. Put the request for bad news. We have all got some version of it that our students need to learn, and we often haven't been able to find time to teach that in class because we have to make sure that they are sure about their diagnosis first. Okay? So let's take the teaching about you're sure about your diagnosis. We're confident that you can make that diagnosis and put that online. Test them, tell them, do not come to class until you can get 85% or 90 or whatever your number is, 100% mastery of this. Run it again and again and again and again until you have mastered this. When you come to class, I'm going to expect everybody knows how to do this. Everybody knows how to use these terms. They understand exactly why the diagnosis they've made is what it is, and we're going to practice delivering that diagnosis to a client, patient, whomever. Okay, so it can be very powerful for that aspect. And then finally, students so appreciate additional opportunities for review and reinforcement, and we know that that's what makes learning that's deep learning, not the surface learning that they sometimes do just before the exam and then is gone as quickly as they have acquired it, but the deep learning that will carry them forward into the next class. Even if you don't care about their learning from your computer-assisted instruction, you might want to do this to see if they're learning anything from your classroom teaching and from the materials that you're assigning them. It can be a very powerful tool for assessing your own teaching. So sometimes I will give students a quiz, and I'll say, go online, do this quiz. Don't worry, it's not for a grade. I'm not going to know what you individually earned. What I want to see is, where's the class at? What concept are you having difficulty with? It's much like the use of minute papers at the end of class when you ask those of you who use minute papers at the end of class and you say, give me your muddiest point. What's the muddiest point from today's class? And you have them write that down. But this is nice and efficient because you can get it in data form, put it to a spreadsheet. It's a little bit easier to analyze. You don't have to go through all those pieces of paper and try to figure out what they just wrote.
You find it, just a question, if you do this the anonymous or non-declarative fashion, it's almost kind of a survey.
Yes,
Test.
absolutely.
I guess I would question whether you get really a good foundation of their knowledge if they're not under some pressure to demonstrate it as opposed to fill in the blank.
I do believe that you do. Here's why. First, I think that students' egos get engaged when they are taking anything called a test. Even if it doesn't count, remember the reaction when I put up there pop quiz. We're kind of enculturated, and maybe not your students. My students are very competitive. They don't want to look bad among their peers, and they don't want to look bad as a group. And so if I come into class the next day and I say, I don't believe this. We spent 2 classes on this concept and only 20% of you got it. Okay, let's do it one more time. They feel bad. They don't want that to happen. They really do want to step up to the plate. Now, are you going to get some who are less engaged because it's not for a grade, because that is their sole motivation for learning? Yes, sadly, you will. Those students, however, you can never engage them entirely in learning.
Oh, good. So it's just not like teaching.
I mean, I just really think that if a student is gaming their education, well, we know this from educational research, that if all a student is aiming for is a grade, if they're gaming all of their education to learn how to get a grade as opposed to how to get any kind of a knowledge, they are necessarily going to be aiming somewhere in a direction that isn't going to give them really good knowledge. Now, you can try to provide other motivation. You can try to give them the long view. You can try to... That's why faculty-student interaction is so important, because it gives them that ego investment. It makes them think, oh, wow, she really cares about me and my learning. Maybe I ought to come to class. You know, it does provide motivation. But you know your own students best, and you know what can motivate them as well. All right, let's talk about content. So suppose I've got you motivated. You're thinking, wow, you know, she's right. There are really a few online quizzes or an online assessment. That might be really helpful. And I'm starting to think, maybe I'll take this and maybe I'll do that. How do you make the choice about what you'd want to do as a little quiz or a survey or an online lesson or tutorial or something? Well, my suggestion is first, start with something that's relatively stable, because you're going to put a lot of time in your first one, hopefully. You don't want to have to go back and redo it all next year. So pick content that's relatively stable. Pick content that's relatively, that you can get pretty wide agreement on. It's harder to write a computer-assisted instruction lesson on something for which the answers are less clear or there's a huge debate or controversy. You can do that, but getting started, certainly don't do that. Start with something relatively stable, relatively uncontroversial, where they'll go to the lesson and when they see that score at the end, they'll go, oh yeah, that means I don't know it, as opposed to, this was an illegitimate exercise because they're presenting some whacked out theory here that I don't believe in. Keep it fairly discreet. It is remarkable the amount of time that you will put into devising the questions, the distractors, the feedback, and so you want to keep it relatively discreet for yourself. You also want to keep it relatively discreet for the students. An online quiz, I think tops, a lesson, tops, should be 45 minutes. I think 20 minutes is best. If you're doing a lesson. If you're doing a quiz, we're talking 5 to 10 minutes. Let them get in there, get it, learn it, out. They can do more, but make it granular, make it modular, so that they can choose to use this in little bits and snatches of time and can have time to reflect on it offline. And always, of course, with any teaching, make sure you're real clear about why you're doing it. Not just in terms of what you want to teach, but what you want them to learn. So always start with that, obviously. Okay, let's talk about the architecture of a quiz or a lesson or something that you might be doing. Okay, You might want to deliver information as part of a lesson, part of computer-assisted instruction. You might want to do more than just ask them some questions and see where they're at. So a lesson would differ from a test where you would give them the information and then let them play with it. And so you'd have some lesson or lecture or links. I do not suggest that you consider this to be a really effective way to deliver a whole lot of information. Personally, I think that if you want to just deliver information, just do that. Just deliver information. The students know how they can work through accessing and gathering for themselves information, whether it's written text or attending a lecture or watching a video. And so that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about online courses with delivery of lectures. But within a lesson, you might want to do some little reviews. You also, what I have found astounding is the extent to which students do not want to take one of these quizzes. They do not want to press a button unless they know they're going to be pressing the right button. They hate guessing. And so what I have done to a large extent with my computer-assisted instruction is I make sure that if they don't have the knowledge or the mastery to answer a question, I've got a little button. Research. Do you need to research this? And they can click it and they can go wherever they need to go to find the answer before they go back and answer it. How many of you completed the, I won't ask this. Recently, you know that university professors have been required to complete some online training for FERPA and harassment and the like. And talking to colleagues campus-wide, I have discovered a lot of different approaches to that. And one is read the question, then go find out what the answer is, and then go click on the answer, as opposed to what was expected, I think, in these lessons, which was I was going to read through all this FERPA stuff, and I was going to learn about all of it, and then I was going to take the test. I wanted on-demand knowledge. So read the question, flip over to the other web page, find the answer, go click the answer, and get the... Well, if a substantial percentage of our colleagues are doing this for our own required learning, would not our students be interested in doing this as well? Is there anything wrong with that? Not if the questions that we asked are the things that we really want them to learn. But then again, this emphasizes how important it is that we really, really choose our objectives carefully. So give them some references, give them some assistance, give them some pop-up, give them lessons, lectures, links. But don't consider that that's the main of a computer-assisted instruction lesson that we're talking about here for these purposes. Okay, and then give them something to do. Give them some questions. Now, when you're writing objective kinds of, when you're writing a test, a paper test, these are some pretty standard kinds of questions that we write. We write true false questions, we come up with some multiple choice or multiple choice sets. Maybe from our childhood we remember matching or categories or put these things in order, or maybe those still are relevant approaches to testing some of our knowledge. Fill in the blank, 1 + 1 equals, essays, longer text responses, and then very discipline-specific kinds of questions that you might want to ask. And being, I went into law so I wouldn't have to do math and science. So, flipping a geometric figure or restructuring a graph or, I don't know. You know what I'm talking about for yourselves. Okay. Now, how does writing a question for computer-assisted instruction differ from writing a question on a paper exam? What's the difference between a true-false question online and a true-false question in paper? The demands for precision are much, much higher. You're not there to explain. The students can't come up and ask a question about it. You're not going to hear or see. They're off. They're gone. They're behind the cyber wall. You don't, as opposed to in the classroom, they're taking a quiz. You can see it takes forever for them to answer question number 1, and they're, you're getting all this nonverbal, boy, that's a bad question. You get none of that. Nothing. When it's behind that cyber wall. So you have to be very precise. You have to test out your questions a lot. I have found that I run a set of questions through the class, distribute it, and tell them, anything doesn't make sense about this question, you can justify your answer. And I tell them this is for 2 extra credit points, which of course means nothing for the final grade, but it gives them a reward. I got 2 extra credit points, right? And they'll put in there, this, I think it's A, but there's a little bit of ambiguity here. And so they do all this work for me beautifully. Hand out the quiz in class, they give it back to me, and then when I put it online, I've got it tested that way. Then I have them tested online. And so you might consider doing that. Choose your question type very, very carefully. Ordinarily, when we use objective type questions on final exams, we're testing knowledge. There really is just one right answer. But that need not necessarily be so in computer-assisted instruction. As you'll see in a minute, there are ways that you can make multiple choice questions be very, very sophisticated that can engage a student in a dialogue that will allow them to engage critical thinking and examine different perspectives. And so think about that if that's something that you would like to do. A lot of times you'll find that multiple choice questions work really, really well. True-false questions work really, really well in these online assessment environments. And writing the correct or the true statement or choosing the A is pretty easy, but the distractors are very, very hard. It is this exercise in particular of writing multiple choice quizzes for online learning that has improved my classroom teaching dramatically. Because the amount of time I have had to spend thinking about the misconceptions that students have, the misunderstandings that they carry with them, the missed learning, so that I can put those in as distractors. Because that's what I'm trying to identify. I'm just as much as I'm trying to identify the student who understands it, I'm trying to identify the student who doesn't understand it and why, so that when the learning happens, after they click the button and the red light comes on, I can explain to them why it is they misunderstood this, what the confusion is, and help to clarify it. And so spend a lot of time thinking about what your students don't know, don't understand. In particular, I think one of the most powerful questions we can ask for identifying student learning objectives is, what would you most like your students to unlearn? They all come in with some notions, and we have to unteach them of those notions. If you know the children's book, Fish is Fish, there's a fish in the pond, and the frog comes along and starts describing other creatures to the fish, and oh, well, this is a bird, and the fish envisions a fish with feathers. And oh, well, this is a horse. Well, a fish with, fish is fish. They come in with the schema in place. And sometimes you have to get them to that point of disequilibrium to understand, no, fish isn't always fish. Sometimes a horse is a horse. And have them unlearn things. This can help you write really great lessons if you can spend some time figuring out where those wrong answers are. Yeah.
Have you ever used, I don't know what the proper title is, it's sort of what I'll call directional questioning, but the answer to the first question leads you to a specific next question.
Yes.
And maybe 3 or 4 steps to explore conceptual understanding as opposed to the luck of picking the right one.
You bet. And I'll show you how I do that in just a minute. Yep. How am I doing on time here, by the way? I never...
12.
Okay. Well, somebody wave at me if, I'm getting into your lunch hour, because I I live in the moment. Feedback. You need to provide feedback for a wide range of responses and carefully consider. You know, when you give a final exam, true, false, multiple choice, whatever, you give them a grade. That's their feedback. Maybe you make a few comments. Think of the learning. If every question they answered, you gave them feedback that said, yes, you got this right, here's why. No, you got this wrong, here's why not. You can engage in such richer feedback in a computer-assisted instruction environment because you're not repeating yourself. You put it in there once and all the students for all time who get that question wrong get the advantage of your rich feedback about that wrong answer. But again, they're not there. And so you have to be very, very careful about tone in feedback. Wrong could cause them to turn off the computer. Anything that's going to insult them, frustrate them, hurt their feelings, they'll turn off the computer. The lesson's done. Or they'll, you know. So you have to really, really be careful. Lots of positives and very, very gentle with the negatives. Common misconception kind of thing, okay? All right, and then sequencing. And this goes to your question regarding how you use the question order. Most basic quiz programs, authoring programs, don't give you a choice of sequencing. They're linear. You get two choices. Either the questions are linear, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you're done with the quiz, or they're random, whatever question happens to come up. Some flashcard programs will keep track of the number of times the student has gotten it right and take the flashcard out to allow for mastery. Yay. That's a good thing for flashcard programs. But the ideal sequencing for anything other than just a little rote kind of a quiz to assess how much they know would be to provide for this kind of varied sequencing. So here's the standard quiz architecture. You have a question, the student chooses an incorrect answer, or they choose the correct answer. In either case, they get the same feedback. They get a right, wrong, and maybe that's all they get. Or they get a right, wrong, and then a little statement about what the right answer is. And then they go on to the next question, and it continues like this. Okay? It's not designed for them as a student. It just kind of marches them through the quiz or the lesson. Now, an improved quiz architecture, which you can do with even the most basic kinds of quiz programs, is if they go to the correct answer, you give them feedback, correct, here's why, and they go on to the next question. But if they go to the incorrect answer, you give them different feedback, identifying why it is that that's an incorrect answer, what kind of a misconception they have, and perhaps even what I tell my students is the fate worse than F. Go back and try it again. At which point they get the correct answer and the feedback to the correct answer so that you got a double loop. They'll very quickly, if they are engaged in Nintendoing, click, 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 click. I understand there were some faculty that did their FERPA training this way too. Click, 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 click. Oops, didn't do 80%. Okay, got those wrong. Let me try it again. Click, 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 click. Oh, got it 90%. I'm done. You know, like, yay, Donkey Kong, I won. We don't want students learning this way. We want to engage their brains, not their mouse. And so Nintendoing through a quiz is not going to do that. And so we've got to find some ways to get some loop backs or to make it not worth it to Nintendo. And so that fate worse than F takes away the incentive to Nintendo through a lesson. But this is what you were asking about, is alternative paths. So suppose, you know, I talked at the beginning about the old programmed learning, and some of us were so frustrated by it because we were really already on page 40 when we started the lesson, but we still had to plow through 40 pages. Well, how nice it would have been if on page 1 it had given us a little question that could assess that we're really on page 40 and skipped us right forward to page 40. And program learning did do that early on. You know, if you got this right, skip to page 13. Well, you could do that with your lessons as well. So if they get it wrong, they have to continue on, but if they get it right, great, let's go on. Best is if you can branch questions. So you ask a question, they get the wrong answer, and you take them over here and you say, well, now, why did you think that was the right answer? And you give them some choices that reveal 3 different kinds of misconceptions that students have, or maybe a 4th choice that says, I was just guessing. In which case you say, no, don't do that, really. Come back when you're more awake. Try this later. Okay? And so you take them through and correct their misunderstanding. Teach them on this remedial branch, if you will. If they get the question right, you can do the same thing. Are you sure? That's one of my favorites. Are you sure that's the answer? Why do you think that's the answer? 3 different choices, one of which makes sense. The other which reveal the same kind of misconceptions that people who chose the wrong answer have. They just happen to guess the right answer, right? You can also use this kind of branching to explore alternative points of view. And I do this regularly in my lesson. I'll say, since I'm in law, I'll have a problem, and I'll say, now how would this problem be resolved? And I'll give them one choice or another, and they'll choose one side, and then I'll take them over and I'll ask them to consider the other side. I'll say, well, what about this? You know, somebody might say this. They might argue this. You could do this in any of your fields. This is just critical thinking, right? Oh, you've chosen this diagnosis. Why didn't you choose this diagnosis? Oh, you think that this would be the proper plan or approach, or why have you considered this approach? And then challenge them and engage in what is the premier pedagogy in my field, which is the Socratic Method, engaging that critical thinking skills. And you can do this with computer-assisted instruction, this branching. And students don't even have to know. They don't have to know that they've been taken through the remedial branch. They'll generally know if you're playing with them. Are you sure? You know, but that's okay. They don't mind it if you have the right tone. So you can challenge and drill as necessary. The lesson won't be the same every time the student works through it. You know, as they achieve higher mastery, the lesson will go faster. It's very student-centered and personalized to their learning. So this is what one of the architecture of one of my lessons looks like. You cannot read this. Don't even try. This is just to visually represent. Over here are those pop-up pages, the research it. You got a question about this? Here. You can research. So they click on a button and it'll flip them over here to a pop-up page and give them some background knowledge. They'll start with the main menu and they can choose which piece of learning they want to explore or test themselves on. Not always. Sometimes this is just a straight line. But almost always I let them choose. And they might just do this module or this module or this module. And a lot of it is pretty linear, right? Right, wrong, yes, no, agree, whatever it might be. Here's one that has lots and lots of different options. This whole question could probably have been a quiz in and of itself. But the knowledge wasn't that sophisticated. It didn't require that. It was just, we're talking about basic vocabulary here. Let me just make sure you got the base, the foundation before we go on. And then we're going to explore a few more questions. And now we get to the crux of the matter. I really think you got the foundational knowledge. Now I'm going to test it. I'm going to branch you off here. If you know it, here if you don't. We're going to try it again here. And down through, you can see another branch here. You can see that sometimes there might be 3 different branches. A lot of times I'll ask them, do you have all the information you need? Or the question will be, the choice will be yes, no, or I need more information. Oh, you need more information? Okay. What kind of information do you need? Oh, I need this, that, or the other thing. Back. Now, of course, all of these kinds of, this architecture requires that they make choices that you can then program, multiple choice or the like. Free text responses keep them awake. Essays, you have to grade, but it allows them to bring all the learning together in a way that's very familiar with them. Okay, what time is it?
2 more minutes.
2 more minutes. All right, well, I got to show you my favorite Cali Offer. This is the tool I use. It is devised for legal education, but you are welcome to try it out and use it. It allows for this branching. It has one button, publication to the web. It is free. Let me know. Glesner-Fines, here on Law School. I'll give you the access to it. And let me show you just quickly what it looks like. Here's a Cali lesson that I've written. It runs in Flash when it's on the web. So I give them a little introduction, some text. I let them do some research if they don't understand these terms. If they came to this lesson having learned this all in class, they can skip this all. They can do some little matching kinds of things, etc., etc. Grade it. No, here's how it goes, etc. And then I give them a problem. Here's a problem. Here's some true-false statements about that problem. And here's some feedback for each one of those. Here's some more questions about it. Now this is really a lesson as opposed to a quiz. Here's a essay. Type in your answer. I'm going to give you a model answer to compare it to. But just to let you know how easy this is, when I say my favorite Cali author, my little boy, when he was 4 years old, wrote this lesson. This is how easy this tool is to use. This is Danny's lesson. He was very excited about the Transcontinental Railroad. And he had this little game about the Transcontinental Railroad. So what do you say to Dastardly Dan when asking him who is his boss? If you don't tell me who your boss is, you'll never get the golden spike. Now here, see, already his spelling has not improved since age 4. Because he's already using text message spelling. In the 10 years since, he still spells because in the same way. Because I do not know. Because I do not like you. Oh, that's a bad example of tone in a wrong feedback screen. Because I like you. Because I do not know. He wanted to play with all the different, so there was a multiple choice question he played with. Here's a matching question that he played with. Nope. Now notice you couldn't go on unless you actually tried it. That's something you can build into this. Here are the good guys and the bad guys. Jefferson Davis, well, he's revealing his Yankee parents there. That goes with the bad guys. These are some imaginary friends he had as a child, Thunder and Ellie. They're both good guys. Calamity Jane, and so on and so forth. And so that was his lesson, 3 little questions. There's no way you're right. If a 4-year-old can do it, you can do it too. So that is a tool that is available to you. In Blackboard, you can do quizzes, but you cannot get the branching. But I urge you, just try a few little quizzes with Blackboard if you haven't already. It's a wonderful place to start. Coming soon to a Blackboard near you at the university, I have it on good authority, Moodle. Moodle has a lesson module or a lesson tool that allows branching, and that's what they call it, branching. I don't think it's as easy to use as my authoring program, but it's still pretty straightforward, form-driven, easy to use. Please let me know if I can help you if you want to try this out. Debbie?
When you're at Cali, if you devise the Cali lesson, can you put it on Blackboard as an external link?
You sure can. Okay. Yep. You just need, all you need is a place to, a server to put it on. Yep. Okay, thank you very much.